The Boeing CH-47 Chinook is a tandem rotor helicopter developed by American rotorcraft company Vertol and manufactured by Boeing Vertol. The Chinook is a heavy-lift helicopter that is among the heaviest lifting Western helicopters. Its name, Chinook, is from the Native American Chinook people of Oregon and Washington state. The Chinook was originally designed by Vertol, which had begun work in 1957 on a new tandem rotor helicopter, designated as the Vertol Model 107 or V-107. Around the same time, the United States Department of the Army announced its intention to replace the piston engine-powered Sikorsky CH-37 Mojave with a new, gas turbine-powered helicopter. During June 1958, the U.S. Army ordered a small number of V-107s from Vertol under the YHC-1A designation. Following testing, it came to be considered by some Army officials to be too heavy for the assault missions and too light for transport purposes. While the YHC-1A would be improved and adopted by the U.S. Marine Corps as the CH-46 Chinook, the Army sought a heavier transport helicopter, and ordered an enlarged derivative of the V-107 with the Vertol designation Model 114. Initially designated as the YCH-1B, on the 21st of September 1961, the pre-production rotorcraft performed its maiden flight. In 1962, the HC-1B was redesignated CH-47A under the 1962 United States Tri-Service Aircraft Designation System. The Chinook possesses several means of loading various cargoes, including multiple doors across the fuselage, a wide loading ramp located at the rear of the fuselage and a total of 3 external ventral cargo hooks to carry underslung loads. Capable of a top speed of 170 knots, 200 miles per hour, 310 kilometers per hour, upon its introduction to service in 1962, the helicopter was considerably faster than contemporary 1960s utility helicopters and attack helicopters, and is still one of the fastest helicopters in the U.S. inventory. Improved and more powerful versions of the Chinook have also been developed since its introduction. One of the most substantial variants to be produced was the CH-47D, which first entered service in 1982. Improvements from the CH-47C standard included upgraded engines, composite rotor blades, a redesigned cockpit to reduce workload, improved and redundant electrical systems and avionics, and the adoption of an advanced flight control system. It remains one of the few aircraft to be developed during the early 1960s, along with the fixed-wing Lockheed C-130 Hercules cargo aircraft, that has remained in both production and frontline service for over 60 years. The military version of the helicopter has been exported to nations across the world. The U.S. Army and the Royal Air Force, see Boeing Chinook, UK variants, have been its two largest users. The civilian version of the Chinook is the Boeing Vertol 234. It has been used by civil operators not only for passenger and cargo transport, but also for aerial firefighting and to support logging, construction, and oil extraction industries. During late 1956, the United States Department of the Army announced its intention to replace the Sikorsky CH-37 Mojave, which was powered by piston engines, with a new, gas turbine-powered helicopter. 2. Turbine engines were also a key design feature of the smaller L-1 Huey utility helicopter. Following a design competition, in September 1958, a joint Army-Air Force Source Selection Board recommended that the Army procure the Vertol-built medium transport helicopter. However, funding for full-scale development was not then available, and the Army vacillated on its design requirements. Some officials in Army aviation thought that the new helicopter should be operated as a light tactical transport aimed at taking over the missions of the old piston-engined Piasecki H-21 and Sikorsky H-34 helicopters, and be consequently capable of carrying about 15 troops, one squad. Another faction in Army aviation thought that the new helicopter should be much larger, enabling it to airlift large artillery pieces and possess enough internal space to carry the new MGM-31 Pershing missile system. 2. During 1957, Vertol commenced work upon a new tandem rotor helicopter, designated as the Vertol Model 107 or V-107. 3. 4. During June 1958, the U.S. Army awarded a contract to Vertol for the acquisition of a small number of the rotorcraft, giving it the YHC-1A designation. 5. As ordered, the YHC-1A possessed the capacity to carry a maximum of 20 troops. 2. 3. Underwent testing by the Army for deriving engineering and operational data. However, the YHC-1A was considered by many figures within the Army users to be too heavy for the assault role, while too light for the more general transport role. 2. Accordingly, a decision was made to procure a heavier transport helicopter, and at the same time, upgrade the A-1 Huey to serve as the needed tactical troop transport. The YHC-1A would be improved and adopted by the Marines as the CH-46 Chinook in 1962. 6. As a result, the Army issued a new order to Vertol for an enlarged derivative of the V-107, known by internal company designation as the Model 114, which it gave the designation of HC-1B. 7. On the 21st of September 1961, the pre-production Boeing Vertol YCH-1B made its initial hovering flight. During 1962, the HC-1B was redesignated the CH-47A under the 1962 United States Tri-Service Aircraft Designation System. It was also named Chinook, after the Chinook people of the Pacific Northwest. 8. The CH-47 is powered by two Lycoming T-55 turboshaft engines, mounted on each side of the helicopter's rear pylon and connected to the rotors by drive shafts. Initial models were fitted with engines rated at 2,200 horsepower, 1,600 kilowatts, each. The counter-rotating rotors eliminate the need for an anti-torque vertical rotor, allowing all power to be used for lift and thrust. The ability to adjust lift in either rotor makes it less sensitive to changes in the center of gravity, important for the cargo lifting and dropping. While hovering over a specific location, a twin-rotor helicopter has increased stability over a single rotor when weight is added or removed, for example, when troops drop from or begin climbing up ropes to the aircraft, or when other cargo is dropped. If one engine fails, the other can drive both rotors. 9. The sizing of the Chinook was directly related to the growth of the Huey and the Army's tacticians' insistence that initial air assaults be built around the squad. The Army pushed for both the Huey and the Chinook, and this focus was responsible for the acceleration of its air mobility effort. 2. Improved and more powerful versions of the CH-47 have been developed since the helicopter entered service. The U.S. Army's first major design leap was the now common CH-47D, which entered service in 1982. Improvements from the CH-47C included upgraded engines, composite rotor blades, a redesigned cockpit to reduce pilot workload, improved and redundant electrical systems, an advanced flight control system, and improved avionics. 10. The latest mainstream generation is the CH-47F, which features several major upgrades to reduce maintenance, digitized flight controls, and is powered by two 4,733 horsepower, 3,529 kilowatts, Honeywell engines. 11. A commercial model of the Chinook, the Boeing Vertol Model 234, is used worldwide for logging, construction, fighting forest fires, and supporting petroleum extraction operations. In December 2006, Columbia Helicopters Inc. purchased the type certificate of the Model 234 from Boeing. 12. The Chinook has also been licensed to be built by companies outside the United States, such as Agusta, now Agusta Westland, in Italy and Kawasaki in Japan. The Army finally settled on the larger Chinook as its standard medium transport helicopter, and as of February 1966, 161 aircraft had been delivered to the Army. The 1st Cavalry Division had brought its organic Chinook battalion, 3 Chinook companies, when it arrived in 1965, and a separate aviation medium helicopter company, the 147th, had arrived in Vietnam on the 29th of November 1965. 15. This latter company was initially placed in direct support of the 1st Infantry Division. CH-47 crews quickly learned to mount an M60 machine gun in each of the forward doors. Sometimes they also installed an M60 or M2 machine gun to fire from the rear cargo door. 16. The most spectacular mission in Vietnam for the Chinook was the placing of artillery batteries in perilous mountain positions inaccessible by any other means, and then keeping them resupplied with large quantities of ammunition. 2. The 1st Cavalry Division found that its CH-47s were limited to a 7,000-pound, 3,200 kilograms payload when operating in the mountains, but could carry an additional 1,000 pounds, 450 kilograms, when operating near the coast. 2. The early Chinook design was limited by its rotor system, which did not permit full use of the installed power, and users were anxious for an improved version which would upgrade this system. As with any new piece of equipment, the Chinook presented a major problem of customer education. Commanders and crew chiefs had to be constantly alert that eager soldiers did not overload the temptingly large cargo compartment. It would be some time before troops would be experts at using sling loads. 2. The Chinook soon proved to be such an invaluable aircraft for artillery movement and heavy logistics that it was seldom used as an assault troop carrier. Some of the Chinook fleet was used for casualty evacuation, and due to the very heavy demand for the helicopters, they were usually overburdened with wounded. 17. Perhaps the most cost-effective use of the Chinook was the recovery of other downed aircraft. 18. At the Vietnam War's peak, the U.S. Army had 21 Chinook companies in Vietnam. Citation needed. Pilots discovered the CH-47A's transmission system could not handle the 2 gas turbines running at full power, and high humidity and heat reduced the maximum lift by more than 20% in the lowlands and 30% in mountain areas. More powerful, improved transmission and strengthened fuselages arrived in 1968 with the CH-47B, followed a few months later by the CH-47C. The CH-47s in Vietnam were generally armed with a single 7.62mm M60 machine gun on a pintle mount on either side of the aircraft for self-defense, with stops fitted to keep the gunners from firing into the rotor blades. Dust filters were also added to improve engine reliability. Of the nearly 750 Chinook helicopters in the U.S. and South Vietnam fleets, about 200 were lost in combat or wartime operational accidents. 19. The U.S. Army CH-47s supported the 1st Australian Task Force as required. 4 CH-47s were converted into a CH-47 as by adding armor and improved engines. Its armament included 2 fixed forward-firing M24A 120mm cannons, 1 turret with 40mm automatic grenade launcher on the nose, 5.50 in machine guns, and 2 weapon pods on the sides that could carry either XM159B, XM159C 70mm rocket launchers or 7.62mm miniguns. They arrived in Vietnam in 1966, and they engaged in 6 months of operational testing at An Key Army Airfield. They performed well in combat, but its high maintenance costs and demand for use in troop and cargo transport was stronger. 3 ACH-47s were lost. One collided with a CH-47 while taxiing. Another had a retention pin shake loose on a 20mm cannon and was brought down when its own gun fired through the forward rotor blades. The third was grounded by enemy fire and destroyed by enemy mortar rounds after the crew escaped.